Donald Trump receives his third indictment. Does he still deserve your support for 2024? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in today's show. So let's dive right in. Welcome to Cutting Edge Faith. I'm Ryan Howard. I want to go through real quick what he was actually indicted for, and then I want to take a quick look at some of the things he accomplished in his first term, and then I want to look at some of his promises and focus for the next term. So let's get right to it. Now, what was he actually indicted on? Well, it was 4 counts. We're looking at the case file here. The first count was conspiracy to defraud the United States. Now, this is the United States of America versus Donald Trump. So, first count, conspiracy to defraud the United States. Second count, conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding. Third count, obstruction of an attempt to obstruct an official proceeding. And number 4, conspiracy against rights. And that's coming to the right to vote and all those sorts of things. So now, if this strikes you as a little odd and out of place and completely undeserving and absolutely ridiculous, I would say you're right on track. That is exactly what this is, and this is what happens in the District of Columbia in Washington, D.C., and so this is just absolutely absurd, and you can probably guess where I'm going as far as whether or not he still deserves your support. Now, I want to take a quick look into just what did he do? What were some of the wins that he had in his first election, in his first, when he was elected first 2016? What were some of the wins that he had in his first term? Well, first, he defeated ISIS in 4 weeks. That was something that he didn't take the excuses from all the people. He actually went to the ground, went to the area in the Middle East, talked to the generals, and found out what they could actually do, and then he said, do it. So he did that. He banned CRT training from federal government. He appointed Supreme Court judges that overturned the unconstitutional ruling of Roe versus Wade. That's right. Those were the judges that he put in place. Now, judges are not perfect, but those are the judges that got it done. He started 0 wars. That's right. Donald Trump started no wars in his 4 years as president. That's the first president in modern history that can say that. Look at that. Now we have the military-industrial complex and all these other interests behind the scenes, these special interests that are pushing for these wars, and there's many other things there too. That deserves another show by itself. Now let's see. What about Afghanistan? He had 0 deaths in Afghanistan. 0 deaths in Afghanistan. Now, just to compare that, no other president can say that while we've been in Afghanistan, and Biden had the most botched exit in modern history. Just the biggest embarrassment for the United States. Left $85 billion worth of equipment there that the terrorists now have, and China likely. And China came in and now has all the mineral rights and all this stuff that's going on there. They are taking over. And so, horrible exit. I will say that was probably not a mistake. That was probably intentional. That's, again, a topic for another episode. Let's see. All world leaders respected Trump. They knew that his word meant something when he said it. That's what it is. And there was peace. There was more peace. And so people were quiet. Kim Jong-un in North Korea, Russia, all these different things that were happening. He got us out of these ridiculous agreements, and it's going the right direction in all these different areas. He got us to be energy independent. That is a huge deal. It is absurd that we buy any energy from anyone. I mean, day one, Biden came in and stopped that, made us not energy independent. And now he's begging Saudi Arabia and these other places for oil, and he's getting laughed at on the stages. Now, of course, his puppeteers are the ones that are leading that, and he's just going with what he's being told to do. But we were energy independent, and that means we were getting ready to sell oil to Europe and other nations who gets, I think, 30% of their energy from Russia. And Trump called out Germany on getting, I don't know what the exact percentage is, but it's a considerable percentage where they get their energy from Russia. And so how can they get their energy from Russia and then say, well, we're going to stand strong against them? They just will shut off the energy. So they got to play by the rules that Russia says. He saved the trade industry, so he put things in order. A lot of people talked negative about the tariffs that he put in place. But the thing is, those are what I'm not all for tariffs, but if there are unfair practices happening, these are leverage points that can be put in place so that people play fair. It's like if they're not going to do the right thing with integrity, these other countries, well, then we can put these tariffs in place to get them to force them to play fair. And that's exactly what he was able to do. He did not squander our leverage. I've negotiated $55 million contracts that span several countries. And when you're negotiating with South Korea or China or India or Brazil or Argentina or Germany or Italy, all of these countries I've negotiated with in global business, you negotiate differently and you have different leverage points. In some regions and some companies you work with, you may have more leverage or less leverage. And you have to be aware of that and use it. Well, most of our negotiations in the U.S., we squander the leverage that we have. And Trump uses it. He's a businessman. He's a global businessman, and he knows how to play hardball. And so he leveraged that, and he was able to do that. He built 500 miles of border wall. And if you have a problem with that, well, I guess stop locking your doors at night. If we don't have borders, we don't have a country. And that's what they want, is borderless countries. If you notice, all of the elite, including Hillary Clinton, Obama, all these people, George Soros, on the left, they were praising the Ukrainians for, well, thankfully they had weapons and they could defend themselves and they need a strong border. Well, that's what we're saying here. How about they just bring those views and bring them over to North America and say that's what we need in the U.S.? You see, that should be an indication to you that something's going on here. Now, Ukraine war is another issue. Trump says he would end it. We're getting into that in just a minute here for 2024. And Mexico supported the U.S. with 28,000 soldiers to stop this trafficking, cartels, all these sorts of things. And Trump made it happen in one conversation, because he knows the leverage that we have in the U.S. and he doesn't squander it. And basically, we exported a lot of the vehicle manufacturing in the U.S. to Mexico. And so Trump said, well, okay, fine, don't support it. Tomorrow, or starting Monday, we'll have a 25% tariff on all vehicles sent to the U.S. Now, obviously, they got their attention. They called back and said, you know what? We'll be happy to support you with, what else can we provide? What else can we do? That's the reality of what took place. Okay, that's just a few wins. There's a book that I should have grabbed, but it's called, it's like basically Trump was the most Christian, pro-Christian president that we've ever had in modern history. He did more for the church, defending rights, defending freedom of religion, and freedom of expressing all of these things. And he got rid of the Johnson Amendment, which was this unconstitutional amendment that said that nonprofits can't talk about political things and can't support candidates and that sort of thing, which nobody's ever been brought up on that. Nobody's ever lost their nonprofit status on that. So it was sort of just a fake muzzle. Okay, there's a lot more we can talk about there, but let's talk about what he has said that he wants to do for 2024. There are a lot of these that are just, I love this. So he says, a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. He will create a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to declassify and publish documents on the deep state, spying, and corruption. Now, the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, was created to stop terrorism, international terrorism in the U.S. and abroad, and as it affects the U.S. Now, they have since then been spying on Americans. And this has actually happened. It's documented. This is not a controversial thing. This is not even disputed. And so it has turned into basically an intelligence collection agency on Americans. That's what the FBI has become. And we are seeing that at the highest levels and throughout the levels. And you've seen all these whistleblowers that have come out. So he says he will create a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to declassify and publish those documents because the American people deserve the truth on that matter. He says he will stop the war between Russia and Ukraine. He says he can do that with a couple of phone calls. I believe that is also possible. What we really need to do is stop that war, draw the line, get the agreement. Ukraine will never enter NATO, and Russia needs to agree to stop coordinating and collaborating with China on military drills and those sorts of things. We need to break that now. And I just was learning recently about how the U.S. is also losing influence in North Africa, and Russia and the Wagner group is taking over down there, and we will never get that back, according to some of the sources that I've heard from. So, and he says he will prevent World War III, which I agree. The getting the U.S. back into where it needs to be in these areas and using the leverage that the U.S. has will help thwart where this is going. But the thing is that those in power, these are not mistakes. These are calculated and they know what they're doing and they want it to go that direction. It's getting rid of the nation state and going towards a globalist agenda. That's what they want, is globalism. And it's not the first time. In fact, let's see, Book of Genesis, Tower of Babel. Let's go read about that. That's another episode. Let me know if you want to hear about that. Of course, we'll be doing an episode on that. The similarities between the Tower of Babel and today. Let's see, tariffs on foreign-made goods. Now, this is basically not just to do tariffs, but this is to level the playing field. So China Reciprocal Act, he mentioned that. He would be doing domestic deportation with Title 42. So right now we have incentives for people to come to the U.S. illegally, and we need to get rid of that. He says he would cut funding for any school pushing CRT, that's critical race theory, transgender insanity, and any other inappropriate racial, sexual, or political content on children. This is an absolute must. Anybody who is not for this needs to check themselves, because this is an absolute must. It's so critical. We need to get rid of this garbage, and it's a huge distraction. They get us talking about all these other things that really any sane person knows is this is crazy. There's no way that this is acceptable. And we've been misled by captured medical industry, captured agencies, captured regulatory industries, all of these different areas to believe this, when in your mind, it doesn't add up. It does not add up. And you're right. Do not let go of that. He says he'll keep men out of women's sports. He will prohibit child sexual mutilation in all 50 states. This is absolutely necessary. There's so much evidence now that has come out. In fact, you can use your logic and reasoning and your just ability to, critically think, or think at all, even minimally, that it's not acceptable to have permanent mutilation done to children under 18. And even children, I've heard down to 12, 13 years old, 15 years old, having double mastectomies. Chloe Cole, you can see all about her testimony. She said she was a boy and she was manipulated by all these doctors and all these affirming things, and that's what's happening. And guess what? There's lawsuits coming. And that's exactly where it was predicted that this would go, and that's the only way it will end. But what really needs to happen is we have parents taking back and standing up for the rights of children. He will, restore, no money to any school that does a vaccine mandate. You might think, well, that's not relevant anymore. Well, there's at least a dozen universities that have that, including Harvard. It's absurd that this is still happening. Today is August 5th, 2023. Harvard still has vax mandate. He says he will stand, this one is critical. This next one deserves an entire episode dedicated to it by itself. He says he will stand up to Big Pharma by creating a special presidential commission to investigate what is causing the decades-long increase in childhood diseases, autoimmune disorders, autism, obesity, infertility, and other chronic health problems. Let that sink in. First of all, did you know that those were the case? If you're listening to this show and you're informed on these, probably. But I mean, to hear somebody running for president say that he's going to do this, I mean, pharma, that is such a huge, that pharma and the military industrial complex and all these these are what's driving a lot of these politicians, people in office, and agendas, and that's why they talk big but don't actually do anything. Well, this needs to be investigated. Now, many are already doing this. There are many who know the truth about this, but it's not widespread enough. There are those of us who are telling the truth about what's going on, and you see immunizations and all these kinds of things, and the health. We have the most highly immunized nation, the most highly vaccinated nation. We spend the most on healthcare. We spend the most on all these medications, all these sorts of things, and we are the sickest. Because, well, why is that? Well, it's a sick care system. Even in medical school, they teach them to treat symptoms. It's symptom treatment. It's not root cause treatment. People don't want to have the lifestyle change, and they don't want to have, but now there's functional doctors and functional medicine and all these things coming where it's bringing back these natural approaches to things where you actually feed your body, right, what it needs. If you take a bunch of garbage and you're going to try and make a building out of it, you're going to go live in that building. Well, that's what a lot of things in the food today now that we have. It's plastics and it's just these materials, it's chemicals and all kinds of things. And that's the building materials. There's a guy, I'll try and think of his name, Sean Stevenson. He has the Model Health Show. He broke a hip when he was a teenager just running because all he ate was fast food. And his bones were so brittle, they were like an 80-year-old's bones. So, but I'm digressing here. So he was able to, through nutrition, get his bones strengthened, even as an adult. And so that's what we need. We need to get the truth out here. The research exists. It won't take long to get the truth out about this. We just need to have that level brought up to that level. That would be very helpful and necessary. He says he will uphold and support the Second Amendment. He will defend innocent life and secure elections with one-day voting, paper ballots, and voter ID. Now, we have these in Iowa, where I live. You have to have a voter ID, and you have to have, paper ballots is good because then there's traceability. In Brazil, they have 100% electronic voting. 100% electronic voting. And here in the U.S., we're trying to have electronic voting. And by the way, the code, you can't look at it because it's proprietary to the company. That's like, how absurd is that? Like, what government official would sign that? Well, someone who's compromised. That's who would sign it. Someone who's compromised. Again, another topic for another episode. Let me know along here which ones you want to hear more on. You can either put a comment below or you can send me a note if you're listening to the audio of this. Now, if we travel. My wife and I were traveling. We were in Brazil during the election. We actually went through the process to vote from Brazil and have that done, and actually through the mail. And so there are reasons to vote early, but it needs to be justified, not just for everybody. Some states just sent ballots out, and I mean that's just absurd. And so I don't. We can see about the one-day voting, but we definitely need to have paper ballots. We definitely need to have voter ID and all these things in place. And he says, end automatic citizenship for children from immigrants. So that's another topic for another episode. Now, some people are saying, well, why isn't he going to debate? We've got debates coming up. Should he be debating? And I want to let you know, just when I ran for office, I learned in the Iowa House of Representatives in 2020, I learned you debate when you're behind. You want to debate when you're behind. So people think, well, he's entitled, and that's why he's not debating. I don't think that's the case. I believe he is so far ahead, he's thinking, well, why would I want to debate? This can only hurt me. Now, he may still do it just because he's a master at debates, and he can hold his own, and he will just shred everybody. But he may not. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. Why, if he's 30, 40 points ahead of even the second person, why would he be going into a debate? I mean, it doesn't really make sense. And now if you're behind, you really want to debate. You want to push to have a debate. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes. But I think it's clear from this show that you can see that I still support Trump fully. He is absolutely the right choice. Others are establishment, and they are not able to. They won't be able to really do what Trump can do. This is a very special time. And of course, we always say, oh, it's the most important election we've ever had, which perhaps each one is. But this one is especially the case because we are right on the cusp of losing to this globalist agenda. And Trump is absolutely the right candidate to get this done. And we need to be sticking with him. I heard on the Todd Starnes show, he's on AM radio, and he said there were people were saying, well, I don't know if it's worth it to go through all this to still support Trump and to be, all this. It's so difficult and it's not, I don't know if it's worth it. And I think, well, that's great. Yes, that's exactly what the goal of this is, to get you worn down. And okay, yeah, that's fine. When the government continues to push on Christian values and continues to push on where you can't share the gospel now, that's right. Just give up because it's this is getting old, it's getting tough, and that's fine. Stop talking about Jesus, no problem. Just do what the government tells you. How crazy is that? So, not only should you still support Trump after this indictment, you should be enraged after this indictment. You should it should be more fuel. I had a friend that sent me a meme that said, hey, I'm voting for Trump in 2024. I'm supporting him fully. And then the other person says, well, he was just indicted for a third time. And then the next he says, hey, why are you trying to convince me to vote for Trump? I already said I'm voting for him. So that's actually more evidence that you should be voting for Trump and supporting him fully publicly. And if people don't like it, well, they can deal with it on their own. And they're going after him to put him in jail. That's the goal. And who else did that? Let's see. Zelensky in Ukraine. That's what happens in these corrupt countries, and that's what we're seeing in the U.S. So absolutely insane. So, hey, I hope you enjoyed this. Make sure you are still supporting Trump and comment below. Let me know what stuck out to you and what you think we need to be supporting, what we need to be talking about and doing, and let me know what other topics that you want to hear about. Thanks for joining. God bless, and we'll see you in the next show.